George and Jade, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Jade Martin, one of the combat design leads on World of Warcraft.
Hello, my name is George Velev. I'm a combat producer on the World of Warcraft team.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for great introductions. We appreciate everything you guys do for both the entire game and specifically for this interview for the Warrior Hero talent trees. So, Bajheera, what are your thoughts so far on what we have been given for the hero talent trees on the Mountain Thane theme?
Yeah, first of all, I feel very grateful and honored to have been given a chance to take an early look and then of course have you guys here to ask questions and get some answers. But I mean, honestly, the first look sounds awesome. It looks like an absolute AoE machine in PvE. I feel like it'd be a complete menace in PvP. The idea of throwing a stormbolt and having it hit multiple targets has been something that I've loved the idea of for a long time. Like maybe being able to do that with sweeping strikes or something like that. So the fact that that's in the talents is amazing. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, I'm already immediately thinking how can I use this in PvP? And so also the idea of having Avatar give you the ability to have your thunder abilities act differently, and then also have it proc more frequently and proc Avatar while Avatar's on cooldown and things like that. The sort of ways that the talents feed into each other and proc stuff and give you little I love that kind of stuff. It makes the gameplay so exciting. We're oh, I got an Avatar proc. That means that I'm gonna have some extra thunderclap action going on, whatever else. That's so cool. So I love that.
Yeah, and for me, when I was looking through this, all I could think about whenever I was reading every single talent was, going back to the Warcraft 3 days, and you get the mountain thing goes for Cosmodon,
Yep.
and just jumping in there, thunder clapping, and as I think mainly main prot warrior. So this whole tree that you guys gave us is just I'm this is great. This is very reminiscent of our BFA days with the thunderclap. You have all these different lore things that are in there, and of course, my favorite talent in there is the Storm Shield talent, and I know we'll talk about a little bit about that a little bit more as we get into it. But let's just start a little bit on the Q&A. So how do you guys feel about the fantasy of the tree, and how well did the talents embody it? Also, can you tell us a little bit about your favorite parts of the tree and why they're your favorite?
Yeah, sure. First, I'm really glad you guys are really your initial reaction sounds awesome. That's kind of what we're hoping to get out of this, and seeing people excited about it, especially people who play the game as much as you guys do, is fantastic. As far as fantasy of the tree and how well the talents embody it, I think we did a really good job. Mountain Thane almost kind of felt like a really big slam dunk, right? When I think of a very iconic warrior archetype, I think back to the Warcraft 3 Mountain King, and being able to bring that into World of Warcraft is a really cool opportunity, right? And we did put a little fresh spin on it. You look at the keystone for lightning strikes, right? The summoning down lightning bolts to randomly strike your enemies when you're dealing damage with thunderclap or other abilities is cool, and it's a new spin. But then having those things happen more frequently, building the synergy within the Mountain Thane tree itself is really cool. I think it's going to create a lot of cool gameplay moments for players. Just seeing the additional thunder and lightning incorporated into your base kit is awesome. Avatar is probably one of my favorite abilities in the game, again just because it was so iconic to Warcraft 3 Mountain King, but just being able to get more of those is fun. And just there's actually a really cool, the Avatar of the Storm capstone for Mountain Thane actually has a really cool improved visual when you avatar. It's almost like crystalline storm embodied, and you just look really rad, right? So I'm really excited about it. I think it's fun. I think it's for me is hitting on all fronts, and it's just really excited to see it in players' hands and in action.
Yeah, Jade kind of stole my thunder there. No pun intended. I also like Avatar Storm quite a bit. I also like things like proc your cooldown when they're off cooldown. Huge fan of those in general. I think they're really fun. Mountain Thane was actually the very first tree we discussed for hero talents. It felt like such a great way to tie both class fantasy and Warcraft and the Warcraft franchise. And to me, it's probably one of the most iconic representations of warriors there is. And current design, like Jade mentioned, hits on a lot of the main points for Mountain Thane. A focus on Stormbolt, Thunderclap, Avatar, and something new with a focus on Storm Strike damage. So I'm really pleased with current fantasy and design.
All right, Baj, what is your favorite thing on the tree that you've seen?
I'm with you. Like I said, I mean, I think I was already gushing about it probably too much already. But yeah, things like proccing Avatar is so sick. I mean, anytime that you're able to pump up and do more damage, I'm all about that. But the fact that Avatar also means you now have access to other things, or your abilities work differently when you have Avatar. Proccing Avatar also gives you all those procs too. So I feel like you're going to be able to build around that kind of stuff, because that's like the final thing. You get that no matter what. And so all your other talent choices along the way can play into that if that's the playstyle that you enjoy. So yeah, proccing cooldowns is like always so cool. But I do like the idea also of just like having on your attacks, you know, lightning strikes. But then you can also make it so the lightning strikes AoE a little bit. And so I mean, it just sounds awesome to thunderclap, and then you also have lightning strikes proccing, and the fact that it's a combination of like prot and fury, so that can be a prot thing, which it makes complete sense to me that you would just be like this thunder god AoEing the entire dungeon, but also as fury. So it almost makes you like a little bit like an enhancement shaman in some ways, where you're already attacking really fast with 2 weapons, and then you also have some command of the elements too. So you're like this raging berserker calling down thunder strikes on stuff, which is another awesome class fantasy that's not completely different than fury. It's just fits right in. So it seems so cool. Yeah.
So can you guys like describe a little bit about what Thunder Blast is, like how that differs from the regular Thunderclap?
Thunderblast is really just an enhanced thunderclap, right? It's a way to inject a little extra damage, but also thematic storm strike damage into it, and then you key into that a little bit within the tree as well. So it's really just an enhanced thunderclap, a way for us to kind of visually sell the Mountain Thane fantasy a little bit more.
Is it going to be visually look different, or is it going to be like a little bit the same?
It is going to visually look different. Yes.
I'm excited. So
Yeah.
that I imagine a thunderclap and my whole screen blows up kind of thing with like white lightning.
Yeah, we're actively looking into the visuals of Mountain Thane right now, but we are looking to see how we can spruce it up some.
We did
All
show a
right.
bit of it at BlizzCon. If you remember, there was a video that looped for a certain amount of time. That's sort of the starting point for that ability.
Oh, that's awesome. So then why, so like I know we're just talking about like the whole general of the hero talents, but why did you wave away from themes like Blade Master and Gladiator? Because that already kind of built into the lore of WoW. Because I'm sure when it came up on screen at BlizzCon, everyone was like, oh, Mountain Thane, Colossus, Slayer, where's my Blade Master? You know, where's my Gladiator? Things that they've kind of been used to and been hoping for all these years.
Yeah, great question. One of the really cool things about working on World of Warcraft and the Warcraft franchise in general is there are so many cool heroes to pull from, so many different iconic things that people expect, and it's impossible to hit all of them. But actually, talking about Blade Master and Gladiator, those are actually 2 hero talents that we did explore early on, or at least talked about in length. And for a variety of reasons, actually different for both, we decided to go in a different direction with Mountain Thane, which we're talking about today, Slayer and Colossus. And part of the reason why is, so Blade Master, you know, when you think of Blade Master, there are 2 very iconic abilities, right? There's Windwalk, which turns you invisible, and then there's Mirror Image, which creates clones of yourself, right? That felt like a very large departure of what the World of Warcraft warrior is, and we just didn't feel comfortable making that kind of change because it just didn't feel like the World of Warcraft warrior. Those are two very cool abilities, which actually do exist in the WoW universe, right? With the mage has both of those, right? Essentially.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. As soon as you were like going in stealth and mirror image, I was like, ooh, not for me.
Yeah,
it did not pass the warrior test for me. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
All
just
good.
one of those archetypes, and it's cool. Like I love the Blade Master, right? Samuro is very, very fun. And
He's out in
you know,
Ashenvale. Yeah. Blade storming me down in SOD. I don't like it.
Yeah, and Bladestorm would be the other one, but that does already exist for the warrior. So it just the 2, we didn't feel like we could add those abilities to warrior and really do it justice. So if we didn't add those abilities, is it enough to hang on just the Bladestorm aspect for the Blade Master hero talent? Then the other one, for different reasons, Gladiator. Gladiator spec has a lot of history in World of Warcraft and a lot of love, but it kind of went against our core philosophies of hero talents, is in which that we're not really looking to introduce new roles into the hero talents, right? So I think the expectation with the Gladiator warrior would be that as prot, I could DPS, right? Like I would be a better DPS, and that wasn't something we were really looking to do. And so that's really kind of why we shied away from it, and also because it has such a storied history. Like if we had any sort of departure from the expectation of Gladiator, it just didn't feel like it was the right moment for that.
I thought that's why we got battle stance now, because I just don't use defensive stance anymore. So I am the DPS when I go into Mythic Plus.
So nerf battle stance is what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm hearing too.
Sorry,
I'm gonna make a
sorry.
note of that
No,
actually.
Yeah,
I didn't know
write
that.
that down, George.
I didn't even know that. That's interesting.
Good topic for our next meeting.
All right, Bash, we're gonna go with the next question.
Yeah, before we start nerfing warriors, let's quickly change topics. So, how is the experience of combining different spec identities now that we're talking about things that people have an idea of? Like, I know what an arms warrior is, or I know what a fury warrior is, I know what a prot warrior is. At least people have those ideas for themselves. What was it like combining those things and making it make sense within the spec of like, okay, so I'm a prot warrior, but combined with a fury warrior, and how do I make sense of not only the spec identity but also the talents? And then also, how does that affect my gameplay? So, I mean, there's like kind of a lot going on, and how'd you guys figure that out?
It was really fun, but it was also a huge challenge, as you can expect. 39 of these, that's a lot of things to talk about. On the comment side, we did a lot of like virtual offsites where we talked about what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate. We had dozens of ideas for all the classes, and we sort of narrowed them down to, like Jade mentioned, what are things that we feel like we can hit with this hero talents feature. And actually that slide up was on that had like all 39, that came directly from our conversations in these offsite summits. Sometimes it's really easy and it kind of makes sense when you have like a name like Mountain Thane or Lightsmith. Mountain Thane evokes a lot of things, like we mentioned, Thunderclap, Stormpool, Avatar. Lightsmith, based off the name, you have an idea of like, all right, maybe it's them creating armaments for their allies to pick up, and that's a great starting point for design. For some of them, like Chrono Warden, both preservation and augmentation share time magic in their talent trees. So focusing on that, making that the focus of a hero talent tree, is also a great starting point. On the flip side, there are hero talent trees like Thane, and Thane screams Blood Death Knight, right? So we need to figure out ways where we can make Unholy also interested in Thane. So we're looking at hooks for things like diseases or ability replacement. That way, it's not just Blood Death Knights that want to play Thane, it's also Unholy, and they feel like it's not just something that they have the option to because blood exists. It should feel good for both.
Yeah, that's kind of how it seemed to me with Mountain Thane. It's actually, my first thought was prot because of Thunderclap, but then it does make really good sense with Fury, like I was talking about as well. So that was like an excellent job there. But yeah, that's very neat where there's sort of one where it really makes sense, and then you have to sort of figure out how to tie in the other ones. So interesting challenge, but I mean, World of Warcraft allows you to do that kind of stuff. It's like a really cool sandbox of fantasy and battle to experiment with. That's awesome.
Yeah, do you guys, so when you guys are making these hero classes, do you have a specific content type or build that you have in mind when you're designing them? Like, are they considered? So for instance, like, are the trees built in this, like in the thought of, oh, this one's going to be focused for PvP, this one's going to be focused for single target, or this one from AoE? Like, how do you guys build that talent? And then also, how do you prevent it from being like every prot warrior is going to be a Mountain Thane? You know, because that's just best for all around content, and versus not seeing them make Colossus, or maybe both arms and fury warriors are just slayers and then Colossus never ever get used. Like, how do you guys balance that and think about that when you're designing?
Yeah, it's definitely something front of mind when we're designing. Like, we're definitely taking these things into consideration as we're designing these. Our goal is, we don't want any of these trees to necessarily be best for a specific piece of content, right? Or spec, even, for that matter. Probably more importantly, actually, like if you're a prot warrior, you shouldn't feel like you have to go Mountain Thane, right? Like, Colossus should very much feel like a real option for you to take if you want, right? And obviously we haven't released that tree, so we can't compare them right now. But as we're approaching these trees, we're trying to make sure that, they have a similar amount of single target versus AoE nodes. They have, similar amount of defensive versus utility options, right? Like, one's not going to have, 5 defensive nodes, and the other one's going to have 1 defensive node. So as prot, obviously, I probably want to go all the defensive unless I'm the person who likes to play in battle stance. But so ideally we're going to try and keep these things as close together as possible. But we know that players love to min max, right? They're gonna they're gonna find the one has the best PvP utility. Maybe that's having 3 storm bolts, right? But maybe Colossus has something cool too, where they they can't be pushed back. I'm not saying that's the thing that exists, but like you have options to weigh against, right? Like these are things that you're going to be able to choose, right? And those are really cool decision points to be made. But like for the player that does find like 1% increased throughput in Mountain Thane versus Slayer, there's not going to be a lot of friction to changing, right? Like that's a lesson we learned from something like Covenant abilities, right? Like Covenant abilities, there was a lot of friction to change, and some people just aligned with the fantasy of, say, playing Necrolord over Venthyr, and so they felt like compelled to take that, but then they knew they were giving up some sort of throughput. We eased the restrictions of that over Shadowlands, right? But it did take a while to get there. But from the start, you're going to be able to, one, select all your nodes. The choice nodes within the tree are going to be able to change at any time, and then you're going to be able to switch between hero talents as well at any time, right? But again, focusing on the original question, like really just to reiterate, the goal is to keep these as close as possible when looking at single target versus AoE versus utility defensives. It's going to be a hard challenge. It's something we're actively working towards, but it's something we're cognizant of as well.
One thing I want to add on is with these hero talent trees, they are talent trees, but they're also not. So unlike class and spec talent trees, you're getting everything here aside from the choice nodes. So us knowing the sort of the tuning package of each hero talent tree gives us a lot of more information and a lot more knobs to adjust for specific content. And if we need to sort of nerf something for Fury and keep it the same for Prot, we have the tools to do that as well.
Cool. So
sorry, go ahead, Bash.
Oh, I was just you go ahead and close it out because I'm about to talk about some PvP stuff.
Yeah, no, I was essentially leading into that. I was thinking like, because what's best in PvE or different situations, I wanted Bash, to weigh in here on what does he think about the PvP side aspect of these talent trees.
I mean, like I said, my mind is immediately spinning about how I can figure out which talent choices are the best. But one of the things that really springs to mind is I love hearing about how you guys come up with this stuff. So as a PvP player, generally, like I feel like people sort of fall into the different categories of, okay, I'm like a PvP guy. Everything that I am looking at is going to be looked at through the lens of PvP. He might be looking at the PvE side, obviously. But for you guys who are come up with this stuff, I want to know, like, does it generally sort of appear to you first as like this would be good for PvE, and then it's meant to figure out if it's good for PvP too, or if you're brainstorming, you're like, this would be sick for PvP, and then you have to kind of figure out how it would also work in PvE. And then I guess the second part of the question is, do you guys on the team have people who are more PvP minded, and then you have people who are more PvE minded? Because I feel like as a player, that's kind of a category players fall into, and so I would imagine that might have a thing on the dev team too. So just getting an idea of how those things work would be really cool to hear as a player for sure.
Yeah, we just want to know who your favorite child is here, the PvE or the PvP,
Yeah, really.
I think depending on what designer you ask, it's probably going to change, right? And that's like one of the great things about working on the game is we have a very diverse combat team in terms of where their interests lie, and I think that's great because really the different breadth of experience just makes for a better game. Because much like our player base, like there are people who digest the content in very different ways, and it's good to have like a beat on everything going on there. Because on the combat team, we have people who are casual in PvP and people who are casual in PvE, but we also have people who are pushing for Hall of Fame and Gladiator every season, right? So it really just varies on what it is. And these discussions, and it's great because someone might come into a pitch with like a really cool idea for like a PvP type ability, and people are like, whoa, that can never work in PvE, or we need to make some sort of concession in PvE, right? Because it's too wild, like what you're proposing. And so like we try and like holistically look at it and try and address, because these talent trees are going to be like an evergreen system. They should feel good for every type of player and make players excited based on the content they're running. As an anecdote, not relevant to the exact hero talents, but when we were designing Spear of Bastion, for example, that came in as a very PvP focused ability initially, right? The idea of being able to lock down people's within your spear's radius and then just being able to blade storm them and kind of like, you're in the arena with me. This is almost like a Makara, like you're stuck in here with me kind of thing, right? So that was very PvP focused initially. And but it also had some applications in PvE too, right? Where you know, keeping people inside of it with a Mythic Plus is good in case you need a kite or whatever. But we found like
sanguine.
Yeah, exactly. And, or if you needed
something in it,
But it
that's
also needed more
did.
Yeah, and it needed more throughput as well, right? Like, and for PvE to be viable against the other Covenant choices. So those kind of talks happen within PvE or within the hero talent system as well. So yeah, I think we're try and focus it on all angles really.
Yeah, very cool.
And then I guess the next question is, how do you see the role of tier sets interacting with hero talents? Are you guys that far into development where you can think about, how are tier sets gonna, work hand in hand? Because you're gonna have the talent system, then the hero talent system, and then, tier sets or whatever other systems you tend to put within the War Within.
It's certainly top of mind for us. Nothing new to share about tier sets in the War Within, but yeah, the implications of having tier sets affect hero talent choice, certainly something we're considering going into the War Within. I'm curious though, flip it around the back to you two. For season 3, we did actively make class sets sort of more involved and impactful for your talent tree selections. I'm curious if you two had any sort of thoughts there or how that went.
Why don't you go first?
I think it's really freaking cool to look at your tier set and be like, okay, so we have Odin's Fury and we have Bloodthirst, so I'm probably gonna start playing some kind of Annihilator, Odin's Fury, Bloodthirst spamming build, and like that is cool to me. And then you have the Execute gigantic Thunderclap bleed spread. Oh my gosh, the sets are actually so sick, by the way. I think they're awesome. Anything that's just like blasting AoE with cooldown reduction and like procs for the situation of arms for sure, like super fun. But then you also look at your build for arms, like, okay, so if I want to make Rend tick more often to get more sudden death procs to then explode Rend on everybody, I probably want to play like Skull Splitter to make it proc more often, and obviously I want to take all these talents on the side that make Execute, stack my Mortal Strike damage and things like that. So I actually love the fact that you can take a look at your build, and it's not like you can only play Skull Splitter or you have to play Precision in order for it to work. It's just like you have these tools and it may synergize well with certain talents on your tree. So I actually think it's sick. I like it a lot because what it does allow you to do is sort of guide players into playing different builds than they would normally play as the expansion goes on. Like last season, it was like you might want to play Raging Blow so you can stack up to that huge Bloodthirst instead of constantly using all your stacks before it's like a big Bloodthirst. And so it's a different build than I played season 1, which is Annihilator, right? So it's interesting. I think it's really cool, and so I'm all for it.
And personally for me, from either like the prod spec or the DPS specs, I like that it tosses things up, right? Like I'll spend a whole raid tier and I'll be playing this one build because it's the best build, right? Like what Baj said, like I will be playing Raging Blow the entire season, right? And then getting the new tier set is really cool because now I'm thinking all about Annihilator Bloodthirst, right? But even in the prods perspective, like last season was all about Last Stand. I'm gonna press it on cooldown. It's no longer a cooldown, it's my DPS cooldown, so I can just constantly use it every single pull as much times as possible throughout the entire key or raid setting. Whereas now this season, I'm like, okay, well now Last Stand's kind of gone back on the shelf and it's more of I really don't want to die, let's hit Last Stand, right? And focusing on a lot of other talents like Shield Slam, things like that. So for me, I like it because it really tosses it up. It makes it always feel fresh every season. Whereas if you take away the tier set and you just kind of go down to the base, then unless you guys do extreme tuning every season or every tier, then it doesn't make it enough to us to want to change our whole like play style. So with the tier sets, I really enjoy it. So that's something I worry about with the hero talents, whereas if they are very strong and they are quite impactful towards our gameplay, how much is going to change? Like, am I always going to be speccing into Thunderclap, right? If I'm a Mountain Thane, like I have to Thunderclap all the time throughout all, like, whatever 4 seasons there are in the next expansion versus it changing up every tier.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great feedback. I'm happy you two liked how season 3 tier sets turned out, and questions like that are questions we ask ourselves all the time too on our end. Fortunately, can't really talk too much about tier sets at this time, besides what I just mentioned.
Of course. And then I guess like like with so many talents that synergize with like specific ability, kind of like what we talked about with Thunderclap and specifically with the Mountain Thane, everything seems to kind of revolve around Bloodthirst with a little bit of Raging Blow. So it kind of already pushes everyone into thinking like, okay, Annihilator, Bloodthirst builds are kind of what synergizes best with the Thane, Mountain Thane. So like, what are your thoughts about that? Do you feel that hero talents are going to push people to play certain builds, or will they still have the freedom to choose whatever they like while still maintaining being a Mountain Thane?
Ultimately, the goal for hero talents is to just really enhance your base build and work with however you feel like you want to play your class, right? Like if it's Annihilator versus Raging Blow type build, right? Like ideally both of those should feel like they can work with Mountain Thane. But that, in reality, with what you're seeing right now on live versus what the plans are in 11.0, those might not always match. So like there's some, for us, there's some work to be done on the back end to make that account for that and work for that. So that maybe that just means like in general, maybe for Fury, Bloodthirst needs to be better incorporated within your build, right? Like so you don't feel like one ability is being completely pushed out of it, right? So there's some work to be done there that we're definitely looking at, and this isn't just like it isn't just going to be a warrior specific issue. Like there are going to be classes that we need to look at and make sure that they align with our hero talent philosophies, and so I think that's something we're looking to address.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at the talents and stuff, that's what it looked like to me. It was more like, these are the main abilities that you use. Like, these are your rotational abilities. These are your offensive cooldowns. These are some of your defensive cooldowns. The hero talents enhance those rotational abilities, offensive cooldowns or defensive cooldowns in these ways. That's what it looked like to me. So it kind of made sense. That was one of the goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing like I worry about is like I said, like it being pigeonholed a bit into like you have to take these abilities and go down your current talent tree this way, which gives us less choice on, will I be able to take more utility certain talents, but no, I can't because I have to go down this side of the talent tree. This is all I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's something we're actively looking at, right? Like if to play a hero talent, it's something a hero spec rather to play Mountain Thane. If you feel like you have to take 3 off the off the path nodes, if you will, just to make it work, and it's reducing the amount of choice you have in the base class, that's something we want to focus on and try and fix. So that's actually really great feedback from the community as these things go live that you guys can give to us about like, hey, the requirements here just feels way too heavy-handed, and it's reducing the amount of choice we have in the base class tree. Like that's the kind of stuff we would love to hear from the community.
Okay, so
already with the thought of Mountain Thane, I think if Mountain Thane's a thing, it's almost like we should just have Thunderclap as part of the base kit of Warrior, because currently it's on the talent tree, right? It's something that we have to kind of spec into and veer towards. Whereas if it's already part of the whole class fantasy of Mountain Thane, it feels like if you go Mountain Thane, it should just be a talent you automatically kind of get, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Something definitely we've discussed about like, hey, if a hero talent tree modifies Thunderclap in some capacity, should that be something we just kind of give you a free node, or like there are a lot of issues with that, so maybe that's not something we do, but like maybe, yeah, I don't know, maybe Thunderclap could be baseline. I'm not saying it is going to be. I'm just saying like there are a bunch of different options that we're really going through and identifying what's going to work best for the class as a whole, and so I'm definitely not promising anything, but we are trying to explore all of our options when looking at this stuff.
Cool. So we've heard you guys mention this a few times. I'm getting the vibe. Player feedback is a pretty big deal. So, good to know. The question is, what is the best way to provide this feedback from players? Like when we see these hero talent selections, we're like, whoa, this is sick, or whoa, I have some concerns. What's the best way to share those with you?
Yeah, I mean, player feedback is super important, and it's really sort of one of the big reasons we're doing things like this, getting that feedback as early as possible to give us a long runway to make hero talents tree is as great as it can be. Best source, honestly, forums. Our official forums are great. They're managed by our perfect community team, and we have threads that you can get feedback on, and those are really nice because it's sort of organized and concise. But things like feedback videos, Reddit posts, Discord threads, we read a bunch of that too. Tier lists are nice as long as they're well explained and eloquence. And in general, when it comes to feedback, prefer written feedback if possible, although we understand that sometimes video is more appropriate. In general, when it comes to feedback, we love hearing how things affect you personally, stories about how something frustrated you or made you feel really impactful. Those are just as important as tuning to us.
Can't believe you snuck a tier list meta in here. By the way, George.
Both of us are YouTubers are like, ding, more tier lists.
Oh, I gotta make one right now.
They're one of many ways that you can get feedback.
So if I put
forums.
Warrior or Warrior always on like F tier, D
They're
tier, does
the
that mean I
worst.
can look
Oh
at
my
buffs?
gosh.
Oh
That's,
man,
that's not how it works.
They're the worst
unfortunately.
class in the game, dude.
Please
Warriors,
don't
man.
sandbag tier lists. Please don't
Oh
sandbag
my
tier
God.
lists.
Look at what you've
I'm
done,
just trying to
George.
play the Moonkin version, you know. That's what they do every season.
I mean, at least they're viable, am I right, dude? I mean,
yeah,
jeez.
I know. God, I can't even get invited nowadays.
Can you imagine playing Warrior? Dude,
I just don't know who
we
to
need some
trust
help, man.
anymore.
Sheesh. Okay, so forums are great. Written posts are your preference.
Yep.
Videos from eloquent, handsome Warrior playing content creators are acceptable. But we'll have the feedback that we can give from the blog post that we'll be seeing. But blog posts only really can give us so much feedback to give. When might we be able to try out these hero talents, hero specs?
Great question. Our goal for these hero talent trees is to have the majority of these playtestable the moment that public-facing content is playtestable for the War Within. Our goal is really to have as many of these in your hands day one of public testing. Since it is such a big part of class design, it's really important for us to make sure that it's online as soon as possible. I know blog posts and articles can only go so far, but when we did this for Dragonflight for the talent trees, we got a bunch of great feedback, and we did like 5 or 6 classes. So our goal following the New Year is to do more of these articles, show off more of these trees. That way, even though content isn't playtestable yet by the community, there's still a good source of feedback coming in for us that we can iterate on before these are even in your hands.
I mean, honestly, looking at this, I think there is definitely feedback that I'm able to provide because able to provide. I think these are going to be really, really cool for players. And I mean, people have all kinds of perspectives, like you said, PvP, PvE, hardcore, or like, a little more casual. So there's going to be lots of people who are excited about this and people who have concerns and lots of perspectives to enjoy. So yeah, you guys can have a good time combing through all of that here pretty soon.
Yeah, and we've actually been playtesting them internally too, which is really cool.
Nice.
We've actually nerfed Warrior multiple times at this point. No, I'm
Classic.
just kidding.
Of course you did.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my god.
No,
wait. Did you see the tier list? We're at?
We're the worst.
Yeah, but
That's
we've definitely been playtesting, so we're looking, we're looking forward to hearing what players have to say when they do go public.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys ever need a playtester, me and Jackson, anytime in internal testing, I can just log on to those, streamer private servers with the fast login queues. We'll just log in at any time you need us, and we got you.
Oh, interesting. That's news to me.
With our
those existed.
With our personal plus damage buffs and things like that, right?
And loot, getting that legendary axe is going to be really easy this season.
I'm on that struggle right now.
Yep.
But okay, awesome. Well, thank you, George, Jade. Thank you guys so much for everything, giving us a little bit of a glimpse into what's coming, with the new WoW expansion. We know you guys are super busy with all the new up-and-coming changes, and we can't wait to, try and see it ourselves. So, remember, everyone, that you can check out all the information regarding the hero talents from the War Within at Blizzard's blog post coming on December 18th, and all the information will be released then.
Awesome. This was great. Thank you guys so much. Yeah. Looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback on these as well.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Buff Warrior.
Good note to end on.